Hello everybody, welcome to Nostalgia Goggles. I'm Chris, also known as Social Gaming Nerd, and we are going to continue to talk about the Ratchet Clank franchise. Now, here's the deal. This Ratchet Clank game was my childhood favorite, the one that I played the most, and to be fair here, I only had two games. I only had this one and the original. I did not have Up Your Arsenal. So, coming back to this game is very interesting because I loved this one a lot. I always wanted the other one, but I enjoyed my time with this one. So let's see if I still enjoy my time with this game. After saving the galaxy from Chairman Drek, Ratchet and Clank are hired by Mr. Fizzwidget of the company Megacorp to recover a stolen biological experiment. So Ratchet and Clank travel to the neighboring Bogon galaxy to recover the stolen experiment from a mysterious masked thief and their goons. So it is your job to get the experiment back. But remember, this is Ratchet and Clank, and corporations can't be trusted, so you have to figure out if Mr. Fizzwidget is who he seems to be, what's going on with this experiment, and if the masked thief is who they seem to be. With all that being said, the story is okay, nothing really to write home about. It definitely does, its job, and that's all I really have to say about it. I think it's a good story, nothing groundbreaking. In truth, it's just kind of telling you, hey, we're in a new galaxy, so things look different, and I think that's really it. You know, no bigger plot here yet. I mean, shit, I don't even think that's really a thing until we get into, no. Up Your Arsenal has a bigger plot than this, but I feel like it's not as deep as like the PS3 games. With that being said, none of this matters if the gameplay sucks, so let's talk about the gameplay. When it gets right down to it, Ratchet Clank Going Commando is an awesome sequel, being a game that plays very similar to the first one, but also upgrading and also adding completely new things. The thing in the game that I mentioned in the original is that strafing isn't a thing. Well, in this one it is, and I feel like the auto-aiming is better. There's also racing segments that I like better, but I like the second half of it. I'm still not the biggest fan of the first one. It's the same idea of boost to win. I didn't say that in the first episode, but that's really how you win the races. But I don't know, outside of the racing, this game feels so much better, and that might just be a bias because this was my favorite as a child, and this is the Ratchet & Clank game that I played the most as a child. So there's gonna be some bias in how I feel about the gameplay because I've been playing it for such a long time versus the first. With that being said, the stuff that is new in this game is that weapons are now upgradable. Does it matter? Not really. You're only able to upgrade once, and it feels nice, but it does kind of fall short. Or some weapons just feel absolutely useless in the latter half of the game, which isn't that big of a problem because when it gets right down to it, this game has a lot of weapons. Speaking of weapons, if you have weapons from the first game and a memory card, you're able to transfer those weapons over. I think that that's great. I absolutely love that. It's cool to be able to have old weapons from the first game. This game also introduces the Coliseum into the Ratchet & Clank franchise, which is a big deal because we have one game dedicated completely to it, or something similar to it, and what the Coliseum does is it is unfortunately one of those mandatory things to do. I say unfortunately because like if you're somebody that really enjoys the idea of picking and choosing what you can do in a game, you know, that's not this franchise, I'm sorry. But the Coliseum is really good for getting bolts, and once again, just really good to kind of test out weapons, you know? If you don't know how a weapon 100% works, it's good to have this. It has two Coliseums in this game, and there you go. This game also introduced ship combat, which it did have a ship combat section in the first one, but this one is your own ship, and you're able to upgrade it as you go, doing missions. There are missions that are dedicated specifically to the ship, and the more you do those, the more you're able to upgrade your ship. Last but not least, we have new microbots for Clank, which are cute and fun, and I like them. They work out very well. They do different kind of jobs, such as making bridges, having a hammer, and having your traditional ones. They look a little different, I believe, but they work the same. All in all, with that being said, I absolutely love this game. I do think if I have one complaint is that I don't like the weapons feeling a little bit useless, but I feel like that's kind of inevitable to a degree with a game with so many weapons. Like there's a point where the weapons are just gonna fall flat. Now, I feel like it's not that big of an issue, but there's just so much to it. Like I feel like maybe having more ammo, and this is stuff that's fixed in the future of Ratchet and Clank, where you're able to customize more, but like at the end of the day, this game's super solid. I absolutely like it, but man, it kind of sucks in the latter half when the weapons when certain weapons stop feeling like they work as well. So with that being said, let's move on to the presentation. So the presentation of this game is interesting, and I don't know if I'm completely at a bias here, but when it gets right down to it, this game is definitely Ratchet & Clank. It falls in line with the aesthetic, but it does definitely feel and look different when it comes down to the way it presents itself, and even down to the sound. It sounds a little different, once again familiar, but that might also just be because that's how franchises work. It's not like New Super Mario, it's more like New Super Mario and Mario Wonder, in where it sounds like Mario, it looks like Mario, but there's differences. I feel like the presentation is closer to New in that case, but like, bad example. What I'm really trying to say is that Ratchet & Clank looks it looks very similar, but the worlds themselves look very different. They look like the game takes place in another galaxy, and it feels like it takes place in another galaxy because it feels familiar because it's in the Ratchet & Clank universe, but it feels alien because it is from an alien galaxy that Ratchet & Clank are not used to being in. And I kind of like that. Even down to the new corporation Megacorp being the producer of your weapons, it really does make it feel like it's in a different galaxy. All in all, this game's presentation is really good, and it handles itself really. I don't know how to put my finger on it, and that's the hardest thing about it. I've been thinking about this for a long time. I don't know how to say it, but it definitely does not feel like a cut and paste version of the first one. There is definite differences, and you can look at it and tell that there are definite differences. From the enemies, to the cities, to the planets, to Ratchet himself, everything just feels a little different, but very familiar. With that being said, none of this matters if you can't get your hands on the game, and we're about to see if what I said in the first one is right. When it comes to physical releases, Ratchet & Clank Going Commando only had about two, which is the Ratchet & Clank Going Commando game itself for the PS2, and also the Ratchet & Clank Collection, which the prices have not changed on that one. When it comes right down to the physical version of Ratchet & Clank Going Commando for the PS2, it'll set you back $11 to $20. Not really the biggest drop in price, but when it comes right down to it, if you have to choose a version of it, I feel like both are valid at this point. They're both super cheap. If you like the Ratchet & Clank trilogy, just go for that one. And even if you don't like it, if you're trying to try it, I think go for the collection. But if you're somebody that likes the games and you want to collect them right now at this time where this episode is out, it's very easy to get your hands on this one. Probably because it's the middle child of the franchise, so like, probably why it's so cheap. With that being said, let's move on to the goods and the bads. This is how you make a perfect sequel. This is how you make a perfect sequel. All you need to do is keep the formula, but add new things. That's what makes a perfect sequel. You know, and I think that that's really what makes this game so fun and so great and worth playing. Is that if you played the first one, and if you're like me that has had issues, right, this one fixes those issues. It's not 100% perfect. The next game kind of hits on... The next game hits that a little bit more, but at the time I didn't play that. Actually, I skipped that game, but we'll get more into that as the episode arises. But I feel like that this is just one of the ways that you make a perfect sequel. That's really it. Yeah, no, that's really it. This game is just super solid. Like, when I say perfect sequel, I don't mean that this game is perfect, mind you. With that being said, let's move on to the bads. I think when it gets right down to it, the only real problem that I have with Ratchet & Clank Going Commando is the fact that really weapons kind of feel useless. Yes, they upgrade and they do feel useful within that short moment, but older weapons start to feel like it just doesn't work like it used to, which is fine in the long run because there's so much variety of weapons within this game and they all kind of get the job done. There's no real need for the older weapons to be like the only ones you use. It causes you to use new weapons, and I think that that's technically good, but I wish that the older weapons would do more damage or do better. Now, this is fixed in later games, but it feels realistically that these weapons just kind of lose their purpose, and that's really the only problem that I have with this game. That being said, let's go on to the final thoughts. So, is Ratchet & Clank Going Commando worth playing today? The answer is yeah, I think it's fine. It's a very solid sequel. It does have its problems, but the problems that come from it are more or less of minor problems. It really depends on where you're standing when it comes to these kind of games. I feel like this game today is still worth playing. I love the charm, I love the story, I love many of the things that this brings to the table, but I do kind of see where this one might be passable. You might want to pass this one up. I don't know, really. But I still think it's worth it. With that being said, what do you guys feel? How do you think this game is today? And what is your favorite Ratchet & Clank if you have one? With that being said, please subscribe if you like these videos, and if not, that's fine too. It really doesn't matter. With that being said, I'll see you guys here next time on Nostalgia Goggles.
Bye!